Therapist. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host. Welcome back to the show, you guys. How the fuck are we feeling? What's going on? Happy Friday, you guys. It's fucking Friday. Is my hoodie okay? Am I too old? Probably. To do the one. But it's kind of cutie. It's also sort of how the hoodie is, but no, Stephanie, you're too old. 34? Is that too old to wear one? 70, pull yourself together. Clip that, clip this, cut that, cut this. Hi guys, welcome back to My Therapist Said. My name is Stephanie and I am your host. So welcome back to the show, you guys. How the fuck are we feeling? What is going on? Happy fucking Friday. We have Bubs in the building. Hi, Bubs. He says hello. I was going to move the camera, but I just need to sit still for 2 seconds. You guys can see Bubs towards the end, okay? Okay. So this episode's going to be about, I had a little win this week that I want to talk about. I want to dive in a little bit around generational trauma because my therapist brought up some ideas in me yesterday, and you guys already know the vibes. The therapist brings up ideas, and then I'm supposed to do what with the ideas? Put it on the podcast for the whole motherfucking world. Thank you. And then final is I want to chit chat horror movies. I told you guys I want to talk about horror movies more, so I'm like, Samantha, you're in charge. Talk about horror movies. And enjoy. Hi guys. Hi. Happy Friday. What? First of all, first things first, what's going on? Quick question. What the fuck? What's going on? Happy Friday. How are we feeling? What was going on? How was the week? What's happening? Update me. Hi, hello. How are we feeling? Can we believe that why did I almost just say the world is halfway over? Stephanie, the world is not halfway over. But honestly, for all that we know, is the world halfway over? Okay, anyway, what I was going to say is, can we believe that it's, this is going to sound very old person. It's fine. You're 34. It's the end of June. What happened to this year, you guys? Are we still doing our New Year's resolutions? Who fucking cares, right? Who cares? Goal set whenever the fuck you feel, right? Right. Okay. So it's the end of June and, chit chat. That's what I wanted to talk about today. No, I feel like it just blows my mind. I need to edit this out, clip that, cut that. You guys, I have to say, most of my editing, I'm realizing, is just cutting out parts where I'm just so annoying. And what's annoying about that is that there's so many points that are so annoying. We're almost 2 years into my circus thinking, and I'm like this. Oh my gosh, clip that, cut that. She's so annoying. She said it too many times. Circle the drain, shoo, shoo, swing. What are we here to talk about today? It's not that. It's not this. Anyway, hi guys. Welcome back to the podcast. Happy Friday. Today is Friday. You've said it 6,000 times. Speaking of how you're being annoying, this is an example. Stephanie, where's the train? Put it on the track. This morning, I went to yoga, as one does, and I was a bad bitch with my bad bitch friends. I didn't feel great. My friend after class was like, because my friend that's a teacher, she called me out in the middle because when we were doing our plank, she tells us, right, we do plank and then we do downward dog, lift up your right leg, bring it forward in plank and hold your knee up, like hold your knee up. And then she always says, break the plane of your arms. And I'm like, bro, I'm still pretty much in downward dog. I can't break the plane of my arms. I'm not strong enough. So I was like pulling my knee up, but I was half-assed doing it. I was half-assed. I know I was. I'm not here to lie. I'm here to lead with honesty. So I was half-assed doing it, sort of downward dog, sort of holding my knee up. But she was like, Stephanie, break the plane of your arms. Like get into plank pose. And I was like, I can't do it. So then I tried to do it. And then I was like, Stephanie, just calm your thoughts. And I was like, it's 100 degrees in here. And I'm freaking sweating. And what do you mean break the plane? What do you mean this? What do you mean that? At 5:45 in the morning. Correct. So that's how my morning started. Then after class, my friend was like, I was wondering how that was going to impact you when the teacher said that to you. And then I started laughing and I was like, honestly, I felt a bit called out, but I also needed it. You know what I mean? And I told him, I was like, I was about to give up during this class because I really wasn't feeling that good. And then the minute that she was like, Stephanie, break the plane of your, try harder, essentially what she's saying, I was like this, all right, I'll try harder. She's right. So then I did try harder and I got through the class. So the cue, it didn't send me into a spiral. It actually caught me at a time where I was about to give up. So it actually went well, but I thought it was funny that my friend was worried about my mental health. He's like, ooh, depending on the day, that really might send her into a spiral. Is she going to cry? I didn't cry. Is this lip too brown? Kinda. Let's just take a smidgy off. That's better. So that's what's new with me. My friends are worried about my mental health. After yoga today, well, actually at yoga today, my cutie little friends from the other studio that I used to go to were there this morning, and they said, we usually get coffee on Fridays. Would you want to go? And I'm like, I mean, in this chapter of my life, I ain't got shit going on. So I was like this, okay. Thanks for the invite. I love a coffee in the middle of the day invite. So, which again, privilege, I know. And so I was like, sure. And I just got back from that. You guys, it was so fun. It was so fun to hang out with my cutie little friends. How much am I going to talk about them? Well, they were giving me ideas for the podcast because they knew I was recording later, and I had my notes app. I was like up, and I was like, yes. So I think I'll talk about what we talked about. No, let's just talk about it now. So they are in their 50s and I'm 34. So there's a generational gap, a difference there. But we're best buddies from yoga, right? And we were just talking about mental health in 2026, and they were just talking about the generational differences because they both have kids that are in their 20s. So I was kind of just like listening to how they feel about mental health and just like how their kids, feel about mental health and just like the difference in generations. And it was just like a really interesting conversation. And I told them I'd bring it to the pod. So here we are bringing it to the pod. What they were saying is, there was one of my friends said this word that really brought up like an idea in my head. She was talking about hyper durability, and she was saying how like that was expectation when she was growing up, even like in her early 20s. She was saying how she was like, my mom has mental illness, and she was like, I didn't want to access therapy because I had fears that I would be then diagnosed like my mom. And she was saying how she felt like there was a level of shame about that, but there was also just a level of fear about that. Like, what does the diagnosis mean? What does that, mean for my life? And just like how she's going to be impacted. And she said it made her not want to go to therapy. And this was like in her early 20s. And then I was saying how, like, I do think there's a difference. I mean, in 2026, we have a lot more information online. So I think there's less fear around going to therapy because people are getting a lot more comfortable talking about mental health terms and talking about knowledge and how their mental health impacts them and things like that. And then my other friend, he's a man. Is that important? Maybe. And he was saying how he feels like I'm going to out him. Yeah, I'm going to out him. He was like, I feel like kids are just sensitive these days. And I was like, I mean, I see all sides of this. Like, I definitely see how people are like, oh my gosh. And I made a video about this online before, but I was like, ew, and oh my gosh, Gen Z is so sensitive, right? And it's like, I understand why they're saying that because different generations of people, you guys, like my parents' generation of people, they grew up in a time where, to my friend's point, hyper durability was the expectation. And again, we didn't have that much knowledge around mental health, or it wasn't as widespread as it is today because hello, TikTok, right? So what I'm doing in this moment is I'm trying to translate it from a middle ground. So I just think it's important to know that, like, what I was telling one of my other friends was, I was like, well, I think that the pendulum has just swung a little far in one direction because we just learned all these mental health words like last week, like when I really think about this mental health boom and therapy and everything, it's like it wasn't that long ago. I mean, just in 2020, that's when telehealth started being a thing. So, I mean, therapy became a lot more accessible in that time. Like now you don't have to go to an office. The insurance companies are like, oh, telehealth is real. Shout out. Thank you for understanding that. And it became a big thing. So I think a lot more people are going to therapy right now, and also mental health TikTok and also mental health on Instagram in 2026 is just a lot more accessible. So the hyper durability is not the expectation like it previously was. To just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, to like just handle life like just like to grit and bear. Is it grit and bear or grin and bear? I always wonder that. I interchangeably say it because I actually don't know the answer. And again, one thing I don't like the most is I don't like knowledge. I don't need knowledge. I don't need that. I don't need this, right? I have a lot of knowledge in my head. Sometimes I just don't need to know. But that'd be nice if I knew this in this moment. I think it's grin and bear, but then I hear grit and bear and they both make sense to me. So anyway, where was it going? Where was I? Yeah, I mean, I think that was the expectation back then because I think it was a combination of lack of knowledge and we didn't have social media like we do today. So we are in a different time right now, and therapy is a lot more accessible, and there are a lot of like, but then the expectation is like, are we getting too soft, right? Is the question. And that's what the question they're presenting. And again, I see both sides of this. I don't think that we're getting too soft per se. I think that's too blanket. But I do think that, I mean, maybe for some people, yeah, there is this potential of like falling into this victim mindset that's going to get you stuck in that mindset. It's important to be mindful of your mental health symptoms and how it impacts you. And then it's also important that we know that like that's your responsibility to treat, access help for, work through, not to become a victim of every experience and be like, well, I'm mentally ill, so I can't do that, right? Like I do think it should be used as an excuse. And I do think that sometimes that it gets into that. Again, that's just the pendulum going into one direction a little too far. I told them I believe that we'll find balance in like the next 10 years. I think this is all so recent and so new that there is this boom that has just created this like dichotomy of people that are like half of the, like my parents' generation is like, what's up with Gen Z? Why are they being so sensitive? Nobody wants to go to work anymore. And then Gen Z is like, we don't want to, work for the man, or we don't want to just have to muscle through our mental health symptoms. Like we want to be mindful, So there's like two schools of thought here, and I don't think anybody's wrong. I just think that we need a little bit more time. So that's what we talked about in coffee, and I told them I'd bring it to the podcast, so here we fucking are. And if you guys have thoughts, add them in the comments. Send me a DM on Instagram, My Therapist Said Pod, because I would like this conversation to continue. I do think it's important that every generation is heard, and I think the millennials, which is my generation, we kind of just sit right in the middle. I think we are the neutral party for the most part because we've seen how our parents were raised, and then we understand how we were impacted by how our parents raised us. So a lot of us are choosing to do things differently, live a little bit differently. And then we're seeing generations that are living a lot differently, being super aware of mental health, and being able to be mindful of their symptoms, how it impacts them and everything. But I do think that there is that opportunity for ourselves to kind of check ourselves in terms of like, okay, I understand my diagnosis. I understand my symptoms. Now it's my responsibility to take care of myself, right? And that can't be an expectation that we place on everybody else. I kind of think that's where it comes to like Gen Z doesn't want to work anymore. It's kind of like, I think sometimes what's happening is that we expect like our bosses, Gen Z, I think maybe what's happening is they're expecting like their bosses to be like hyper aware of their symptoms, but their bosses are maybe from my parents' generation, which their bosses are like, what do you mean you have anxiety and you can't come to a meeting? Gen Z doesn't want to work anymore, right? Like that's what I think is maybe happening. But what we just need to do is just meet in the middle, like I hear you that you have anxiety. How can I work with you? How can I meet you halfway? And how can we work with not just like totally avoiding, oh, no meeting because I have anxiety. You know what I mean? I think it's not a black and white situation. It's our generations need to meet in the middle. We need to have conversations like this. I think kind of feel like as I say this out loud, I'm like, this feels important to just say to the world, like, you guys, I think we need to not judge one another, generationally speaking, or just otherwise, around just like everyone cares for their mental health differently. But I do think like meeting in the middle and being like, okay, so these are your symptoms and this is how you're impacted by that. What do you want me to do about that? Or how can I a better way to say that would be, how can I better support you, in the workplace, in the world, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? Did I cover that way too quickly? Yeah, definitely. I had a black coffee this morning, so we're fucking zooming and moving, baby. It's like, how do I think about, I think like my parents' generation was not mindful of how their mental health showed up. And with that, I have generational trauma, which is actually what I wanted to talk about today. So how's that for a motherfucking segue, bitch? My one friend was like, you have a podcast? And I was like, yes. Which I don't always, he's a man. I only tell women about the podcast. I rarely tell men about the podcast. With the exception of my one yoga friend that's a dedicated listener, and you know who you are. We were chit-chatting this morning. I will tell. But men in general, I'm like, you don't need to hear about the podcast. Because I'm like, what? I'm going to be all vulnerable online, talking about my mental health, talking about being a drug addict. To a man that has listening ears off? No. So my friend this morning that is a man, he's like, you have a podcast? And I was like, I didn't want to tell you that. And as I was leading, he was like, send me the link. And I said, you can look it up. I'm not here to help a man. You guys make more money than me. There's a wage gap. I'm not going to send you a link. If you want to look at the podcast, look up the podcast. My therapist said, look it up. I only treat men like that. Don't worry. My one friend this morning, I was making a comment about how a movie sounds like a man movie. He said, that's a sexist thing to say. And then I started thinking, I do say things that are sexist a lot. How's that for increased awareness? Am I going to change? It depends on the context. But I mean, again, until women make enough, until women and men make equal money for, you know, the same work, I honestly think the men can just deal with it for a little bit. And she's a therapist. Wait, let's talk generational trauma. I was talking to my therapist yesterday, and I was saying how, as a therapist, I really see how specifically my generation, not to take total credit, but like to give some credit to the millennials out there. I do believe my generation was one of the first generations to really take our mental health seriously. I think we absolutely got the knowledge from mental health. We also really took the time to better understand trauma, intergenerational trauma, our parents' patterns, our parents' parenting, and how it's impacted us as individuals. I believe the millennial generation was really the one that really took this seriously for the very first time because we had access to social media for the very first time. So I do think millennials have this really interesting view about mental health in 2026. And the generational trauma piece is interesting too, because I think a lot of millennials were the first ones to break a lot of generational patterns. I was talking to my therapist about this, and I was saying how when I'm a therapist, I'm gassing up my parent clients, the ones that like decide to, first of all, you going to therapy is more than a lot of my clients' parents ever chose to do. Like the fact that they're sitting with me, I never let that just like be like it's no big deal. Like I really make a point to like gas them up. Like just so you know, it's huge that not only are you going to therapy to take care of yourself, but you're also parenting your children so differently that you were parented, and I want you to know how big of a deal that is. Like I make it very clear to all my clients that are parents, and then I make it very clear to all my friends that are parents, you know, that because I really do see this the millennial generation changing the world when it comes to parenting. Not everybody, but quite a few are, because our access to mental health care is different in our generation versus every generation previous, right? So I was talking to my therapist yesterday about my addiction, and I was talking about my podcast, and I was saying how on my podcast, me talking so openly about, I don't know, for example, overdosing twice is such a vulnerable topic, and it makes me feel terrified. It makes me feel very exposed. Bubs is big dancing behind me. Don't worry about it, Bubs. We're not literally live on the mic. Don't even trip, my dude. You can make all the dinosaur noises you want. Do what you want today, Bubs. It's Friday. Fuck yeah. So I was talking about just like what I was really talking about, to an earlier point about editing, I feel like, is it all worth it? You know, like I was really having an honest moment with her yesterday with myself, really, where I was like, is it all worth it? Like to be this vulnerable online, to spend hours editing, you know, to handle the learning curve of putting video out. Like there's just a lot that goes with this. It's not just like turning on the mic like it used to be, you know? And I was wondering, am I getting too deep into something that has no promise of outcome, you know, of like a positive outcome? Like it's just like, it is what it is, you know? And I was just expressing my concern about that, and she was essentially saying, like, she asked me, actually, she was like, well, why do you do it? And I always remind myself, and I told her, I do it because I want to positively impact people in the world. She said, how do you want to positively impact people? I said, I want to encourage people to be more honest about their experience. And how I do that is I lead with honesty about my own. You know, I don't hold anything back in terms of like my mental health struggles or my addiction, which is the same thing. We don't need to keep separating the two, you know, like people say dual diagnosis. I'm like, there's hella diagnoses in little human beings. I don't even think dual is fair. It's like there's mental health. Mental health is mental health, you know? So Yeah, and I was just saying that, and she was like, why do you do it? And I was like, because I want to positively impact. She was like, well, like, how did she actually asked about she asked about the episode where I talked about overdosing on Dayquil when I was 17, and because I brought that episode, actually after I edited it, that's when I was really crying after and during, and I started getting worried, like, is this a problem? Like, am I crying after and during because I'm doing something wrong? Or am I crying after and during because I'm processing my emotions and feelings? And I told her that when I was going through this. And then yesterday she checked back in. How are you feeling about that episode being recorded? What was it called? Actually, I feel like it was last month at this time, right? I think it was in May. Do you remember? Bubs just threw me off because he's fucking barking at the door. I told you guys he barks like once a year and it's always at the door and while I'm recording the podcast. I think it's called Down to Clown. Yeah, I do believe Down to Clown was the episode. And she checked back in and she said, how are you feeling since that episode? That's a really funny title. Like, imagine if she was like, she didn't do this, but imagine if she was like, how are you feeling since Down to Clown? Like, not me making the most serious ass content with a stupid ass title like that. I'm like, oh, so when I OD'd at 17, oh, what's the episode? Oh, it's called Down to Clown, motherfucker. Not me using humor as a coping skill, bitch. I'm like, so if you guys really want to hear this deep, dark, tragic story, go ahead and turn on Down to Clown. So stupid. It's so stupid. Oh my God, somebody. I'm feeling like good because I have no engagement, so it's perfect. I have one view on YouTube. It's perfect. I feel protected in that. No, she asked me about it. Good job, Bubs. Good boy. And I was like, I feel better in this moment. And I told her, I said, actually, one of my really good friends, afterwards, we were going to get piercings. And we were driving back from getting our piercings. And she listens to the podcast. Hi! She knows who she is. And she brought it up to me. She goes, dude, I just listened to your episode about how you overdosed on Dayquil. And she has been a family friend of mine for like years, since we were kids. And she was like, I just had no idea you were struggling with that at that time. I mean, I was like 17. And she looked at me with like, I told my therapist, like, it was a look that really impacted me. It was a look that showed me that I had impacted another person. And she looked at me with just like the most caring look, and just like to not only listen to the episode, but to take the time to bring it up to me in person and just tell me that she was impacted by it made me feel so incredibly brave. And I didn't know I felt brave until my therapist brought this up for me yesterday. This is why therapy is so cool, right? Like, our lives just passes by, but sometimes my therapist is like, she like creates these little, like, almost like a, I don't know, like a, I don't want to explain it. Like, you're kind of like, right, your life's like a book, right? And it's like almost just like a little bookmark, right? Where she's just like, this is impactful. Like, put this in your mind. Like, my therapist with me yesterday literally was like, let's sit in the feeling that made you feel when she brought up your podcast episode. Like, close your eyes and sit in it for like a couple minutes. And I did, and it's uncomfortable to sit through that because I wanted to just explain to my therapist. And then she looked at me like this, and then I said this, and then I said that, da-da-da-da, which is how I can get all the time. And I see my therapist's face though. She's like, kind of like the eye, like the look she's giving me is like, oh, she's doing it again. Like, she's just analytically explaining everything logically, but I'm not feeling my fucking feelings, And I was doing this as I was sharing about that, where I was just like, oh yeah, she looked at me like this, and then we did this, and then I did that, and then made me feel this. Actually, I didn't say anything about making me feel anything. I was just like, and then this, and then that, and then I kept moving on. And she was like, let's pause there. Let's pause with how that made you feel. Which, hate to see it, right? Not me pausing for emotion. Ugh, hate it. And I need to be like guided towards it. And then I'm like, fine. I sat there and I thought about my friend and I thought about the impact. And I told her, I said, the feeling that's coming to my mind after a couple minutes of sitting quietly in this, yeah, I can sit a couple minutes quiet. Isn't that nuts? You would never think, huh? Because I literally need to hire a professional to help me. Okay. That's how much I don't sit quiet. And I told her the first feeling that comes to my mind as I sat with that was I feel incredibly brave. And she was like, brave? Like how? And I thought I was just going to say like, oh, I'm brave for being vulnerable. But here's what came up for me instead. I told her, I said, my mom and my biological dad both had alcoholism. And what's interesting about this is I never asked either one of them about it at all. Like my mom would tell me growing up, like, oh, I used to struggle with that. My mom didn't drink. So she would tell me like, oh, I don't drink because I like used to drink too much. Like it's kind of just like, she would just kind of like brush it under the rug like that. And as kids, and as a young adult, I never asked any additional questions. Does this keep me up at 2 a.m.? Yes. I wish I would have. I'm an addiction specialist, like in my work professionally, treating addiction is what drives me. And I just think about how much, wow, you didn't ask any questions to your mom. And I didn't, I didn't ask enough. I knew some, but not much. And I was telling her, I was like, my mom and my biological dad both struggled with alcoholism, but never told me that. This was just something that I just like out of context clues, I started to understand deeper. But the fact that they never told me about it made me feel like maybe they felt shame. Or maybe there was a reason they never brought it to me. They didn't want to talk to me about it. And I think a lot of that is that they were trying to, like, I think generationally speaking, it wasn't normal to just openly talk about struggling with drugs and alcohol. If anything, you just deal with that behind closed doors. Even back then, it was definitely more of a moral issue. I'm a bad person, so I struggle with drinking, versus how I live my life is very differently. I will honestly tell anybody anything about my addiction. There is nothing that I'll hold back around it. I'll tell you what I've done. I'll tell you in what, in what setting. I'll tell you how it impacted me. I'll tell you everything. There's no part of me that wants to hide or feel shame around that. So I think not only do I feel brave for sharing it for my own experience, I feel brave because I feel like part of this is me sharing it for them. If my mom and my biological dad had the same experience of me where they were able to just freely talk about their mental health struggles, which addiction falls into that category, I wonder how much it would have changed their lives. And I just feel like part of me is doing it for them as well, because I don't think generationally speaking, they had that safe space to be able to do so, because societal views on the whole thing were that you don't talk about this stuff. And now, society still judges addiction. Oh my God, the comment section sometimes on people's posts about addiction and sobriety are fucking nuts. There's still so much fucking judgment. Like it hurts me to see it because I know I'm walking into that fire. I'm ready for people to judge my relationship with substances. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for someone to be, this is funny. I've been thinking about this bit for weeks now. It just came to my mind. I'm ready for someone to be like, so what? You overdosed before, but you still drink on occasion? Like you're not really in recovery for opiates. You're not in recovery at all. You're an active addict. So what? You're just an active addict helping other addicts? Like, you're a fraud. Like I'm ready for it, because I know it will happen to me. And I know somebody won't agree that I have any level of recovery because I smoke weed, like I know that. But what I'm doing is I'm leading with honesty. And at the end of the day, maybe I'm a hypocrite, but at least I'm an honest hypocrite. So I get why my parents didn't want to bring it up. It was just very different back then. But I also wonder how much that impacted them. And I wonder, did it bug them? Did they want to talk about it? Was there shame? Why not bring it up? Maybe you could talk to your kid about it. There was times that I remember one time I came home so drunk, and my mom saw me in the Ring camera, and the next day, this is the only time she's ever said this, the next day I was going out again, and she looked at me in the eyes and she said, Stef, your drinking reminds me of my drinking. I do think you need to be mindful of here's what she told me. She said, this is also so how you meet somebody in the middle with this. She said, maybe just take one less shot. Which, okay, I make a lot of content online around how when you talk about how you have addiction and people tell you, oh, just get sober, that's not helpful to someone who's navigating addiction. We know that total sobriety is the most viable option for us. We know that. But that doesn't mean it's accessible to everybody. So it's important that you listen to people's stories about addiction and you meet them in the middle. And that's what my mom did in that situation. She didn't tell me, no, you can't go out tonight. She didn't tell me, you really need to quit drinking. She didn't tell me, I'm an addict, so you're an addict. She didn't do all that. She was just met me very kindly, compassionately in the middle. She was like, where's she at? She literally has her shoes on. She's going out. What can I tell her to just meet her, to just help, to just remind her of like, hey, girl, you have options here. And hey, I'm saying something. So there's obviously an issue here. And that's what she said to me. And oh my God, the way I carry that with myself. And I know it sounds so silly. Like, oh my God, you're just going to what? No, just not take shots. But you guys, I've changed my relationships with substances in general and alcohol for sure. And I drink totally differently now. Because honestly, because my mom kind of brought it to my attention that like, hey, it's not all or nothing, girl. Because in my mind, it's like fucking balls to the motherfucking wall. If we're going out, I'm going out, you know? But it doesn't have to be like that. You can go out and still not make like the worst choices, Stephanie. And honestly, I mean, there's been fuck ups and situations that are like not great since then, but it does stay in the back of my mind of like, I think that was my mom trying to tell me something. She wasn't the best with like being very upfront and honest like I'm being right now. But again, I believe I'm doing this because she couldn't. So the podcast is so healing for me for that. So thanks for being here. I'm going to wrap this up. So thanks for being here. You know what I mean? And then, okay, what's the last thing about therapy? I was telling my therapist I'd be gassing up parents because they're changing generational patterns so fucking much. And my therapist reminded me, just because you're not a parent does not mean that you're not breaking generational trauma. Your ability to talk about your addiction, that bravery, it's not just for you. It is for your parents too. And I think, how fucking cool is that? And I feel really proud of myself for that. To talk about something that my parents were not willing to share about, you know? And I do it scared. Look. You guys think this is a game? I have a Post-it that says do it scared. It's been on my desk for about, I don't know, maybe 3 years. Because everything I do a little scared. I mean, I'm also mentally ill. It's not easy for me. My mind loops around the most sad shit, you know, or the most worrisome shit, any lack of control. My mind is looping around that. What are the people going to say about you being an addict, you know? I don't know, but I'm prepared for it because I'm leading with honesty, and that's that. So that's how generationally we have changed, you know? That's how I've at least changed. And I do believe that if I can inspire one person to share their story honestly, I want to do that. So can I say one thing about OCD and horror movies? Okay, so I was trying to go to bed last night and I was thinking, why do I love horror movies so much? And then I was thinking, okay, this goes back to what? Like early 2000s. I mean, I was probably in middle school. I had this, so I grew up and I lived in my house, and my environment was very chaotic and very overwhelming. And I did not get along with my mom or my stepdad. And there was just a lot of like just drama, a lot of like just, it was so loud, and there was some abuse. And when I was experiencing challenges, I would go stay at my friend's house who lived down the street, and her parents like were like my second set of parents for sure. And in my house, it was very controlling. You're not able to cuss at all. You're not able to watch R-rated movies. You're not even able to watch kissing on the TV. If there was a kissing scene, my mom or my stepdad would be like, turn it off. Like, that's how serious this was in my household. My friend's household, totally different. Like, her parents totally just like were the coolest. They're the chillest. And I still to this day talk to her, and I love her parents so fucking much. When my parents died, they were like so supportive. Like this was, okay, do you guys, this is way throwing it back. But in one of my earlier episodes, I talk about there was one family friend that came over to our house after my dad died, and he walked up to the front door and he said, this fucking sucks and I have no idea what to say. And I talk about, on that episode, I talked about how much that impacted me of like, I love that he just said, that he just honestly said, I don't know how to support you in this moment, but I'm standing right here to support you. Like, I love this fucking sucks. That's such a good thing to tell someone who's grieving, honestly. And that's him. Like, he really changed my life in so many ways. And I grew up with them as like my second parent. So I say all this to say that was also the household that we got to watch rated R movies, baby. So, and all the horror. So me and this friend, we became besties in like, I don't know, 6th grade. We really go all the way back. So since like 6th grade on, I've been watching all the horror movies at her house. I watched Saw. I watched The Ring. We watched The Grudge. Oh my God, The Grudge 2. There's so much. The Ring 2. I mean, one time we went camping and watched The Ring 2 in the car. Do you guys remember car TVs? Watched The Ring 2 in the car. Then we went camping after that. I'm not sure if there's a scarier situation to get into after watching a horror movie than a camping situation in the dark after you watch The Ring. Oh my God, I still remember this shit. Like, the most fearful I've ever felt for sure about horror movies was always with her because I was a kid. But I was like, fuck yeah, it's going to make me tough. And low-key, it kind of has. So, but I also feel like my symptoms of OCD were really like, to Kyle Richards' point, kicking up, kicking in, kicking out, kicking up at this time of my life because I was also competing as a horseback rider and I was riding a lot. And there was a lot on the line, a lot of unknowns. If you know anything about OCD, the more unknowns you have, the more your OCD, oh my God, front and center, bitch. Like your OCD will tell you, bye, Bubs. Love you. Your OCD will tell you what the fuck to do. Oh, you want to win your competition this weekend? Okay, well then you better go, I don't know, move that mouse to the left 3 times. I mean, I don't know, silly goose biz. We already know. So my OCD was also really tough when I was navigating this in like middle school. And I used to love watching horror movies. And I always thought, I was like, probably because when I was thinking about this last night, I was like, why'd you watch horror movies? Probably because part of it was like, wow, freedom from my parents. This is fucking incredible. The rebellious teen in me that will never die. The rebellious teen in me has been alive since before I was a teenager and way after I'm a teenager. I'm still rebellious. So I think it was partially that. And then I kind of had this realization last night where I was like, maybe part of it also was that my OCD was so front and center. This being a major distraction in those moments was nice as fuck. We watched all the Saw movies together. That's the first time I ever learned the F word. Isn't that funny? You want to know where I learned fuck from? The Saw movies. I remember one time they said it and I was like, what's that word? And she was like, you can't, that's the F word. And I was like, stop it. That's the F word. And then I was like, I officially know them all. And then what? No, I just don't stop saying fuck for the next 3 decades of time. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, what's that word? I want to say that every day for the rest of my life, including on my podcast with the public, with global reach. My other thought is with OCD, for a lot of people, we have intrusive thinking, which makes our brains do the most wild shit. Like the things that go through my mind are so wild. And I believe a big part of it is having OCD because our intrusive thoughts push everything to the very extreme. Like the worst case scenario, that's what intrusive thinking is oftentimes. It's very scary, you know, especially as a kid. I was like, oh my God, I have no control because what am I having these thoughts? I'm a bad person. What is that thought? Pussies. Good boy. So I started thinking about this last night, though, and I was like, maybe part of the reason why I love horror movies so much is because it's like it's not only is it a distraction from my circus mind, but it's also like my intrusive thinking outside of my body. It's external intrusive thinking. Here's my example. Like in the Saw movies, right? They like they like rip off your fingernails. There's that one where he puts his hands into that metal, into like this metal thing where you can't pull your hands back out of it. And then his arms just get torn up. Like that type of shit is some intrusive thinking if I ever seen it. Like I guarantee somebody on that wrote the script for Saw, somebody in production, they have OCD. Somebody did. Because I do think that a lot of the Saw movies is just like intrusive thinking. It's the worst case scenarios and these environments that are so freaking gnarly. Like what? Getting your scalp pulled off by your ponytail? That is an intrusive thought if I ever motherfucking seen one. I'm trying to think of more examples. I haven't seen Saw forever. Should I have done some like pre-pod thinking? I mean, think about, do you guys remember in Saw when that guy falls into that pit of needles? That's intrusive thinking for sure for me. I do be thinking like this, you know? I do be thinking like, what if I fell into a pit of needles one day? Part of the reason why I think I can't scuba dive, because when I'm scuba diving, I'm like, what if, right? It's chaotic as fuck. And I do think that's where horror movies and I just get along so great, is that horror movies kind of meet me in the middle. My internal thinking is the most horror movie coded shit I ever motherfucking seen. So the minute you put an external horror movie on, I'm quiet. I'm cool, calm, collected, because I'm like, finally, someone freaking falls into a blender. Finally. I've been thinking about me falling into a blender my whole motherfucking life. Now finally I get to watch it play out on screen and be like, okay, that's how it would go, Stephanie. Does that letting your spiral enough? Does that answer your questions about what it would be like if you fell into a blender? And I'm like, yeah, thanks. And then I let it go. I mean, low key I do. Isn't that? You guys want to know my favorite thing to think about lately? Sticking my hand into a garbage disposal. Why, Stephanie? Why are we thinking about that? Because that's what my intrusive thinking be thinking about. Every time I use the garbage disposal, and I mean every fucking time, bitch, I'm like this. I wonder what would it be like if I stuck my hand in there. I understand it sounds like silly goose business because it literally is. But this is why I love horror movies. Because it literally matches my internal mind. It kind of low-key answers the question. Because I want to know, what would it be like? Why, Stephanie? Why do you need to know that? Because I'm mentally ill. Do I need to say it again? I'm mentally ill, okay? It doesn't make logical sense, but that is what OCD is. And I'm not going to be ashamed about it, you know? I do think that there is so much shame because intrusive thinking is it's intrusive. It's thoughts that are not mine. They just got planted in my little mentally ill brain. And my mentally ill brain was like, I'll grab that and I'll grab that. And garbage disposal here and blender here and needles here and this here and this here. And oops, my arms are stuck here. And oh my gosh, and here, you know. I'm trying to think of other ones. Saw movies were insane. Do you guys watch Jigsaw? That's one of my favesies. I know that's one of a newer one. Of course I like that one because I like the newer ones. But I've seen all of them. How many are there? Like 9? I want to say there's at least like 6 Saw. Like Saw to like I think to 6. What I can never follow into the Saw movies though was like the storyline. Like I was just there for the horror and gore. You know what I mean? I wasn't really there to listen about how this guy was like he like had cancer and then he didn't have cancer and then who's in charge of the Saw, you know, situation. It's like, I don't know. Who is it? And there's like what? Police officers and detectives there. I don't need all that. This is not CSI. This is literally just to meet my intrusive thinking in the middle. And I'm just going to be here for an hour and a half and I'm going to be horrified. But finally it's external horrified, not just internal horror, which is my daily life. Thank you. I wonder if there's any other horror movie fans that also have OCD. If you are that, you are my people, DM me on Instagram. I want to meet you. Do you guys agree? Sometimes I'm just like, right, like life is a horror movie. Okay, final. You guys, I had a major win this week that I have to tell you about. So my friend and I got coffee what I thought was last year. And there's these little parking slips once you pay for parking in this one little area. And the parking slip of paper is tiny. And it slid in the front of my car into my windshield. And I saw it every single day after it slid there for the rest of time. Okay. And I can never get it out because my fingers are too fat to get it out. So I just had to every single day see it. And every single day I drove my car, I would think, wow, I hope one day I can get that paper out of there. But then every day I was like, I can't. And it was on the passenger side too. So it was just like an annoying reflection. And it's just been driving me nuts, but not that nuts. I mean, I have tried to get it out. I've also asked when people, if I get my car washed, I'll ask them, can you guys try to get this out? And nobody can ever get it. So I just accept that this is just the life I live, right? I'm very blessed. I'm extremely privileged in so many different ways. There are also aspects of my life that are a little unfortunate. I mean, for example, dead parents. The second example, there's a paper stuck in my car and it's been there for, let me tell you, this week, I finally, someone got it out for me. And the minute I saw it get out, I was like, they left it though on the dash at the car wash. They left it on the dash. I go to pick it up. Why does it fall back under the windshield? Immediately. This is the unfortunate side of life, right? I mean, I'm a bad bitch, but I also have a paper stuck. So I'm like trying to get it out. I'm like, Stephanie, you are going to sit in this fucking passenger seat and you're going to get this out because this has been impacting you for what, 6 months, 8 months, right? It's been impacting you forever. Every day you get in your car. Oh my God, that annoying paper. Oh my God, that annoying paper. And then we continue on. Life goes on. Not that big of a deal. I'm really blessed, privileged, whatever. So it slides back under and I'm like, Stephanie, just stick to the motherfucking bit. Just try to get it out. Try to get it out. I get it, you guys. I fucking get it. And I pull it out and I was like, oh, today is the best day of my motherfucking 34 years on this motherfucking planet. Oh my God. I said, how long has this been in here? I pick it up. I look at it. I see 2024. I was like, oh, July. I was like, oh my God, this has been in my car since 2024, July. The way this has just sort of been running tabs in the background, just been alive and well for over a year, almost 2. Blew my motherfucking mind. That was such a win, guys. That was such a fucking win this week. Feel fantastic about that. Okay, can I tell a funny Bubs story and then I'll let you go? Here's my funny Bubs story. I'm going to just give you some more context about Bubs because I feel like you guys maybe missed like the beginning lore of who Bubs is. So when we first adopted Bubs, he was nuts. I've told you guys the red tape on the file, the must go to mind your manners before getting a Samantha, right? We knew he was not going to be a great listener from the jump. The first night we had him at home in my parents' house, me and the friend actually referred to earlier that told me that she listened to my episode. She was there this evening. This was 8 years ago. We're all in the living room. We're hanging out at my mom's house. And all of a sudden, Bubs is here first night, right? All of a sudden, we hear the napkin holder from the kitchen table fall over. All of us looking, we see Bubs, a pit bull, 80 pounds, walking on our kitchen table. He knocked over the napkins. We said, Bubs, get off the kitchen table. Like, we had to have a whole talk. What the fuck? This dog has no manners. None. Okay, so that's how Bubs kind of broke into our family in a way. And after that, things just got nuts. Bubs has chewed up a couch. He has chewed up every Amazon package that pretty much was ever delivered to my mom's house. He's chewed up irrigation. He's torn up, I mean, truly everything. And I was thinking about this yesterday. One time, Bubs was sometimes when Bubs was like younger, he would have like a guilty look on his face. He would do like, he either would like run away or he would go, my mom's house had like a doggy door. We would hear him go out the doggy door and my mom would always say, what does he have? And we'd be looking around the corner like he'd be in the backyard tearing something up. He took an Amazon package from inside the house, runs out the doggy door. He's tearing it up in the backyard. Like, I mean, this would be like split seconds. Bubs was nuts when we first got him. One fucking time, Bubs is running through the living room and kitchen. And my mom said, what does he have? And I look over and he has a Ziploc bag hanging out of his mouth. And he's kind of struggling to breathe. So I'm like, oh my God, what does he have? I run over to him and I open his mouth like jaws of freaking, like I'm opening the mouth of a shark. And I open his little mouth. I look in, I see a gallon-sized Ziploc. What is this? I stick, and he's choking at this point. I stick my whole hand into his mouth and I pull out, are you ready for this? An entire block of cheddar cheese. An entire block of cheddar cheese. A full Tillamook. What's it called? Tillamook. $17 for a block. Vibes. Brand new block. The biggest one you can get of cheddar cheese out of Bubs' mouth. He was hanging. It was all the way down like a snake. All the way down his neck. And I had to freaking pull this out with my hand. And then he just walks away. He said, thanks, Samantha. And I said, my name's Stephanie. And then he leaves. Like, that's the Bubs I grew up. That's how Bubs grew up within my family household. So I just have to say, he's nuts. And I get it. Now he's 8. He's not as nuts. He's calmed down a little. But you guys, it's not lost on me that when we first got this dog, he was nuts. He still do be doing that shit sometimes. And now he's just an innocent little baby. Look at him. Seeping. I had to tell a Tillamook story, Bubs. That's so fucking funny. He was like this. I still remember. And I was like, oh my God, he's choking on something. What did he get? Oh, he got a whole block of cheddar. Of course he did, because what else would he be eating right now? Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. I am breaking generational trauma, and I believe many of us millennials are. So shout out. Also, generations Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I believe all of us are breaking generational trauma by being mindful of our mental health symptoms. So don't let the generations that are older than you give you a hard time, but also be mindful that they didn't have the same resources that you guys have, that we have. So we all need to be mindful and compassionate with one another, okay? We just all are in different places. We all grew up at different times. We have to know how to meet in the middle. When people are super aware of their mental health, that's not inherently an issue. It's just, how can I meet you halfway vibes? How can I help you feel more empowered in your mental health symptoms? And to not judge that, you know? But then to the generations that didn't have the access to, like, to my parents' generation and to my friends, like, I get it that there is a level of like, I didn't live like this, so why do you get to live like this? And it's like, well, because times have changed. So I think there needs to be compassion on both sides, but I see both sides. And to the generations that didn't have that knowledge, I'm sorry that that's how, you know, I'm sorry that what happened to you was like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, because that sounds fucking hard. You know, and I'm really grateful that I was born when I was born, because I didn't really have to deal with either one of those too far in either direction. I do believe I grew up with a lot of balance. Also, I'm a therapist, so I'm super mindful of my own mental health and my own patterns, but I know it's a privilege to be able to be this aware. It's such a privilege, and I never want it to sound like anything else. It's a privilege that I can access therapy. It's a privilege that I have this knowledge at my fingertips. It's a privilege that I have a master's degree. Like, all of this is such a privilege, and I never let myself forget that, you know? So I understand that navigating your mental health, it is being aware of your mental health symptoms, it's such a privilege. And I think it's important that we just give compassion and grace on both sides and let ourselves know that everyone's really trying to do their best. But I do think that generationally speaking, it's just been different, you know? But I do think that we have to be accepting of change and accepting that this generation that, you know, is younger than me looks at symptoms differently, and they don't, you know, push through when they maybe our previous generations would have, you know, in terms of like working for the man, these huge corporations, keeping a job for 25 years, stuff like that. You know, I think that we're a little bit more flexible with that these days. And I think there's value in that, you know, but I do think that, again, if you go too far, we do fall into the victim mindset. So it's like, okay, yes, being aware of our mental health is such a privilege. And then also how we navigate that is our responsibility, though. We can't put that on other people to be like, well, I'm really anxious, you need to change. It's sometimes that, but mostly it's, I'm really anxious. How am I going to better take care of myself with these resources and knowledge that I have, you know? So I think there's value on both sides, but I also think the awareness and chit chat about it, the conversations around this, is what's going to heal the generations and help us meet in the middle better, right? Not to judge each generation for being so different, but instead have conversations around, wow, you grew up differently than me. Okay. How does that impact us in our relationship, right? How does that impact us in the workplace? And how can we better support each other based on where we're at? Right? Like, I think younger generations could actually give a lot of our newer knowledge to older generations, as long as the older generations are open to hear it, you know? And the older generations treat the younger generations with compassion and kindness, knowing that, yes, you didn't grow up like this, and it is extremely unfair that you didn't have these knowledge and resources. I hear you. You know, it's super unfair. But it's also good that we're at least talking about it now. Like, at least now we have the opportunity to break these patterns, because I do believe this is going to better the whole world, not to be dramatic, but low-key to be dramatic, you know? And that's how I'm breaking my generational trauma. While I'm not a parent, I'm breaking my generational trauma in being honest about my struggles with mental health. And at the end of the day, I may be a hypocrite with my addiction, but at least I'm an honest hypocrite. I love you guys so fucking much. Thank you to my cutie little friends for inspiring this episode, and have a good weekend, guys. I'll see you on Wednesday.